Hi there, it's Memory from Friends Abroad Relationship School, and this is episode 26 of Trauma on the Screen, and I'm hoping that this time we are able to do this properly. So we are featuring a film or reviewing a film entitled Damage, and I'm going to be joined by my friend Judita to review this film. So Damage is a film about self-betrayal. It is a film about not adhering to the, to the vows in a marriage, and also betraying someone else. Because we know that when we betray ourselves, we are also likely to betray another person. So basically, this film starts with a doctor turned minister who is married, has got an older son, and he has a young daughter also. And this man is, okay, let's bring Judita to the camera once a man. This man goes home and he finds out that he's... I'm so sorry. I hope we can do this time. Third time lucky. Yeah. So I'm just explaining the whole film about Stephen going home and finding out that his son Martin has got a girlfriend, a new girlfriend, and then he goes to a party, and then the girlfriend appears at the party. And this is where my concerns start, because she seemed to have sought him out at the party, although yes, she introduced herself, but she went in there as if she was looking for him. And then she went to him, she approached him and introduced herself. And then she was staring at him. She had been staring at him from the start. And this makes me think she was seeking him out. It was as if it was intentional to me.
Yeah.
But that is a trauma which was being portrayed there, but in a way where she was seeking chaos.
Yeah, I felt that as well, that she was intentionally on the prey. Yeah, it was almost a bit sinister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so too. I thought she sought him out, and knowing that he was the father of her fiance. And then they meet obviously at home, where she turned up with Martin, and there was this tension between them, which was palpable. And I'm also wondering about the marriage itself between Ingrid and Stephen, whether it was solid enough. Obviously not, because she missed all those little cues. She missed that interaction between them, because body language is very strong and powerful, isn't it?
I actually, I didn't see that, in the sense that I couldn't have, like, if I were the wife, I couldn't have picked up his body language. I mean, I thought that, yes, I didn't think their marriage was ideal, or at least at that point, there was obviously some problems, right? Because he felt not connected enough to realize, well, to himself and to her, to realize that, he's wandering off, and that maybe he should focus on reviving the marriage with her, instead of, seeking external validation outside. So that was already problematic. So I guess, yeah, it wasn't, at least, maybe it was earlier on, but not at that point in time. Because it wouldn't have happened, I think. I think that if you're strongly connected, right, you would recognize that something's wrong, that something needs to be revived in marriage, I think.
That is true. That is so true. And what really struck me about the two of them is the way that they proceeded to then start sleeping together, knowing that this is my son's girlfriend and I have a wife at home. And she, knowing that this is my fiance's father, and I am in a relationship.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
For
you're
me, for me,
moving
that
on.
was actually, well, I think that was the most um, compelling part, actually, right? Because, sorry, I'm sorry that I'm shifting, because, yeah, he didn't think through of the potential consequences, and the consequences were actually the most horrific that you can have. And that's what the wife says at that, when we get to that point. I mean, I'm jumping a bit ahead, but that's what the wife said in her dialogue with him when their son dies. Didn't you think of what it could do to me and to him? She says at one
Yes.
point.
And I think what happens is that when are you able to move?
Sorry, you know what? I'm gonna go to another. I was clinged to Emmanuel earlier on. I'll go upstairs. I think the connection should be okay. Yeah, now I can. I was breastfeeding him.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
I noticed your back is there, so that can help. So what I felt was that when you have trauma, unhealed, unresolved trauma, I don't think you are able to recognize what you are getting yourself into. You can get yourself into danger. The problem is, I have said this before, we tend to assume, because we have abandoned the psychological dimension of existence, we tend to assume that danger is only physical. You see, when someone is waving a weapon at me, I feel that is danger. But we don't recognize that danger. There is a lot of danger in psychological aspects and social aspects, which come also they are in psychological form anyway. Because what happens is, when with trauma, it takes away our self-leadership. And this is why what happened to this person, this man he was a doctor. He had made decisions all his life that were useful and helpful, and also he had obviously made decisions at work as a doctor. And now he is not thinking through what he is doing. Amongst all the people in the world, even if he wanted to betray his wife to choose his son's girlfriend, you can actually notice that there is no self-leadership there. It's all been taken away. He's now thinking like a child, you see. And this is a politician, which we say social status. Yeah.
And I also thought, when we talked earlier about the other movie, Phantom Thread, and you said, oh, people can use all kinds of ways to condition, so here I think the woman was using sex as it was so obvious, to lure him and to be needed. I think that was the discussion we had.
Absolutely.
And
wow.
Yeah. And about him, if I can say, I mean, maybe we'll get to it. We get to the scene, but since we're talking about him, I also, for me, the scene where they had dinner with the grandfather of the wife was very significant. Where he said it reveals how he grew up, in what kind of environment he grew up, and he says, the son says, the girlfriend comments, at least you had roots, right? At least you had a family, in one piece, and they didn't divorce. But then he says, yeah, but something was missing. And then she further asked, what was that? And he says, well, I guess warmth was missing. And then the mother takes the self-blame, and then he corrects her, the son corrects her, and he says, actually, it was my dad, it was you, Dad, that lacked warmth. So I think that also tells a little bit about how, the dynamic of him growing up, and how he was, and what, I guess it's also a kind of probably trauma, you know, that he couldn't relate to his son with connection and with warmth. I thought that was quite significant.
That is so true. Thank you for raising that, because I feel that for Martin to gravitate towards this woman, that was not a healthy relationship, because he was with somebody who was betraying him. And so there was something he was seeking out that he found in this woman. And there was also something that his father was seeking out that they found in this same person, you see. And for him to be betrayed, Martin, there was something that must have happened in his childhood for him to face that betrayal. And maybe this doctor, this man, maybe it was not his first time to do that. Maybe he had done it privately and he hadn't been caught, you see. Because that tends to happen quite a lot. And also being a doctor, doctors tend to work long hours. They tend not to be there at home most of the time, especially when they are still in the early stages of their profession, and over the years, unless they become consultants and they are doing their own thing, or they are locums and they choose their work. Otherwise, doctors do work a lot. And it could be that Ingrid was looking after her children, and this Stephen was not there most of the time. So that might have also caused this problem with Martin meeting up Anna, because he was also able to give her space, apparently a lot of space, to do what she wanted. And this is what Peter said when he saw Stephen. You remember in the scene when this guy was at Anna's flat.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, he said,
Yeah.
I mean, her childhood friend, right? Peter, her childhood friend.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that is very powerful. And what I also picked up about Anna, for her, it was not so much the trauma of her brother, but there was a whole dynamic of her diplomat father moving around. I have read, you know, from in books written by Bowlby about this having an impact, because it doesn't provide roots for a child when they move around a lot. Apparently, it's actually as impactful as any other trauma, because they don't have a sense of stability as they move around. And I didn't know this myself. I've done this before, where you move around with children and you think that, well, it's for, you know, we have to, and all that. But actually, thinking about it and looking at it and reading from the books, it doesn't give a child stability. They cannot form roots in one place because they are worried that they are going to be moving soon. So consequently, I think what happened between Anna and her brother was that she ended up being too attached to her brother, and in that they had to look after each other because there was no stability elsewhere. They were the only stable figures in their own lives, the two of them.
Yeah. And the mother divorced several times as well. I mean, apart from the moving, they were the different men as well. And yeah, that was actually quite obvious from her narrative, what she was telling about her brother. And it was an almost like an incestual, I mean, kind of like quite a sick attachment, actually, because I think what she was implying quite directly, actually, right, that he was sexually attracted to her or wanted to. Yeah, I think that's right. So that was quite
that is true.
Well, obviously quite concerning.
I think
you wonder what was there.
Yes, from the review of the film, it did say that the brother was attracted to her in that way. From the film, it would seem like things actually might have, you know, gone further, but we don't know that. But there was that element, and I feel that he was 15, 16, wasn't he? And I think what happened was that he was, because of the instability in their lives, he had taken the attachment with his sister a step further, and it was no longer just a sister. He saw it as everything that he could have. And so he wanted her to himself, because if he didn't, he wouldn't have anyone else because of the instability of the adults around them. Yeah. And this is what happens with children. They can end up in that category where they can take things too far because they are trying to cope and they don't know right or wrong. You see, that this is my sister. I can't have her like that. All my life, she has to have her own life. And this is the reason why he killed himself.
And can I ask you, Modesty, then, I mean, in this case, do you think it's the failure, let's not use that word, but the oversight of the mother to have picked up cues that, you know, something's a bit off between the two of them, between her son and her daughter, or that they're too attached? Or do you think it was neglect, or, you know, or just missing out on the clues by the mother?
I think she might have been a self-absorbed parent. There are parents like that. They are called self-absorbed. You can actually look them up. So self-involved, and they focus more on themselves, and they don't really sort of care much about anyone else. And it's not because they don't want to care, but because of their own trauma. What they tend to do is they are too self-involved. They've got self-pity, in fact. So they are trying to find some happiness. If you think about her marrying 4 times, it looks as if she was more focused on trying to find a relationship, trying to find happiness elsewhere than actually parenting. And we do that, Juditha. We do that. I have been that kind of parent myself, who didn't recognize that I need to be a parent and be there for my children, and thinking that relationships will give me something, because I only learned later that there was this trauma that was making me look for love in the wrong places. And you can end up pursuing relationships at the expense of the well-being of your own well-being and the well-being of your children. And I'm grateful for learning about trauma and about healing, because I have recognized that there is so much happiness in myself that I can find in myself, in my own life, and in my, in relating with my children, more than I can find in a man. It's lovely to have a relationship, but it must not go to that extent where it damages other relationships or interferes with how you parent. And that is what a lot of people struggle with. They end up pursuing a relationship, and they don't realize that in pursuing that relationship, their children are suffering. Because if you find a woman who is complaining about a man, if you find a man who is concerned about women or complaining about women, most of the time, that man or woman does not have a great connected relationship with their children, because they are pursuing their own happiness. And that stems from our trauma. But awareness is key in this regard. We need to know what we are doing and why we are doing it. And we need to know that happiness is not found outside ourselves. So this is, in a nutshell, what was happening to this woman. She was self-involved, self-absorbed, and she was not focusing on her children more than she should have, as she should have done, or she needed to do.
Sure, and I think that's one of the key messages as well of the movie, the powerful messages, because it's also the dynamic with him, with Stephen, right? He was focusing too much on this external relationship and not thinking of his of the well-being of his son. And same with the mother of sorry, I forgot the name of the characters of the lover of the woman. Yeah, I watched it recently, but I'm not bad at remembering it. Anna, yeah. So yeah, that's definitely one of the key messages as well, I think, of this movie. Really powerful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great point, because you can notice when when Anna told him that, you can't leave your wife, there's so much there and all that, and he didn't care. He didn't care. He was infatuated at that point, that he didn't really think of his family. And he was not thinking about his daughter, because like you said, this was having an impact on his young daughter. And the problem with that is, he took it further. The young girl saw him coming out of Anna's room, and he had to lie to her. He had to lie to her without even thinking of the consequences of what he is doing. And this is what happens when people are now trauma bonded and they are in this in-depth. They can get out in that period. They need to go through the whole process to see someone die, for them to then wake up and realize this is a woman who is as ordinary as anyone else.
Yeah, no, it was really amazing. And then, about the daughter again, that scene where he well, yeah, actually it's the scene that you've just described. And he kind of justified himself to her, lying. And then she says, I thought that was so brilliantly done. She didn't say anything. She just said, good night, Dad. I'm off to sleep. I think that was so telling. Like, she didn't buy it. Kids are smart. You can't lie to them. They can pick up on cues. I think she connected, because quite often there were scenes where they only showed the daughter observing, and that was quite meaningful, I thought, as well. It was done, I think, on purpose to show that, she's picking up these cues. She's not clueless as her dad might think, just because she's a child. She picks up on cues, and there were often quite a lot of scenes where they focus on her gaze and kind of figuring out what's going on. And I thought that was quite well done as well. And it's very, you remember the period where she had a kind of a boyfriend, and then something happened, and they split. So it was like almost like she was mirroring, or something. There was something happening in her world that was reflecting the adult world. But yeah, and there too, I can imagine. Well, no, I cannot actually, because it's so catastrophic. So the damage it has done to him, to the wife, to the daughter. Well, the son died, so obviously that's like final damage. And then you wonder about Anna, and the final scene where he says, I saw her at an airport and she was carrying a baby, and she was just an ordinary person, just like any other. I think that too was so well, such a compelling scene as well, because I thought it shows how, we have people around us and they seem ordinary, but everyone carries, and some people carry really quite heavy stuff with them, and it's invisible. We're just ordinary people, but what might be inside of us is not visible, really. And I think, that tragedy has, you cannot see that in people. You have to kind of live through it. And I thought that was also very compelling as well, that final scene.
Yes. So about Sally, the daughter, children, like Gaba Mate said, children don't get traumatized because they get hurt, but children get traumatized because they are alone with the hurt. Because this child was alone observing this, and she had nobody to share it with. She couldn't share what she was experiencing, and that would impact her later on, because when you are traumatized and you don't have anyone to share that with, it will catch up with you. And we've learned this from John Bowlby. You know, it doesn't really go unless you deal with it, because it needs, what cannot be communicated to the mother, you know, is something that would take you take it with you to your grave, and it will strangle you, it will kill you, it will damage you. Whatever it can do that is adverse, it will do it to you. And this is what was happening to Sally. And if there are real life Sallys out there, I hope they get help, because that is exactly how we all struggle later on. And then what you are talking about ordinary people having extraordinary experiences, you see, and we can't see that. And this is in two parts, you see. We don't know what anyone else is going through. And so when we are looking out there, we need to be aware of the fact that people are not what they seem. People are carrying a lot of burdens. People are carrying a lot of trauma, a lot of weight, and it requires understanding and maybe support for them to get through that. And the second part for Stephen saying these words is like saying that she was as ordinary as any other person, and he could have found anyone else, you know, who was as ordinary as she was. And to me, you see, what that says is that sometimes we get hung up on someone. We focus on one person, and we destroy ourselves. We go into the world unhappy, go to work sad, go into groups, oh my God, he left me, she left me. And we spend years focusing on one person who is very ordinary as any other person that we can meet. And there are so many ordinary people out there, and he could have found another ordinary person to do that with, but he chose her. And this is the problem that we have in society. We get to pick people and we attach them to our goals. And the problem with that is people let us down, you see. Because what then happened was, when his son had died accidentally because he was sleeping with his girlfriend, his son's girlfriend, this girlfriend now came to her senses and recognized that she didn't want this. This is not him for her. And she wanted to go back to the person who was there for her when her brother died. And now he has ruined his family. He has lost his son. And he has also lost this woman who led to him losing everything, you see, because he didn't stop to think there are other people out there, or I have a wife at home. Let me work things through with her if there was a problem. And being a doctor, he could have gone for therapy. I know it was in the 90s and all that, but there was therapy then. Therapy has been there for ages, and there were people who have been able to, there are people who have been able to afford therapy for years. And that's what he could have done, but he didn't. Instead, he looked at this girl and he saw her as something different, entirely different from everyone else, until he didn't, until you noted how ordinary she was in the end.
Yeah, that's a great interpretation. I think, you know, the reference to the final scene, what you were saying earlier about she's just an ordinary woman, and about, you know, the way you interpreted it, I think is great in that, you know, it can be actually you know, anyone, but we attach to people to go to our goals. And so yeah, that's that. I think that's the power of that statement of his, actually, as well, as you said. Yeah, no, it was a very compelling movie. Yeah, it really has a lot of messages in terms of, you know, from a trauma perspective. It's a great case example, I
Absolutely.
think.
Absolutely. You've got a lot of self-betrayal there, number one. I'm sure the relationship with his wife was a betrayal from the start. Some people marry for the wrong reasons. And what then happens is that they recognize their mistake years later. And I feel like that was what was happening there. And that needed undoing. Unfortunately, it was the undoing was in the most tragic way. And we have her, Anna, with self-betrayal of unresolved trauma and betraying herself through and through by going through men and using sex as a weapon to lure people into his life, because that's all there was to it there. You know, until they started having breakfast, of course, which really didn't help, because in the end, that's all it was. That's all they did each time they met. And then we have also the self-betrayal, because I do wonder whether both the son, Martin, and Ingrid, the wife, didn't really pick up that there was something wrong in their relationships. Because sometimes we just turn a blind eye, not necessarily to that particular relationship, but to the fact that there's something going on. Because we want so much to hold on to the illusion that I am in a fantastic relationship, or I am in a relationship. And this is where we go wrong. We tend to want a relationship so much that we betray ourselves. But things do catch up with time. You know, something has got to give if you are betraying yourself. And then we also have the mother of Anna, who was constantly betraying herself, moving from man to man, man to man. And this was only because she was not happy in herself. And all these people are not happy in themselves. And she was trying to find love in all the wrong places. And she couldn't. And she couldn't. And her daughter, they were not that close. But another theme I picked up in there was how family matters, how family is strong, how blood bonds can be that powerful. Because even though they were not close, she invited her mother to, you know, to dine with the family of her fiance. And when things were really bad for her, when life was a challenge, when she didn't have anywhere else to go, she went to her mother. She went to her mother in the end. And that's a very compelling theme sometimes we need to recognize. Because even when we struggle with family, our mother, father, especially, and children, even when we struggle with them at some level, we can change these people in our lives. We can change them. And so sometimes what I recommend to people who come and say, I'm struggling with my family, I say, the best thing that I feel to do might be to create boundaries and maybe minimize contact sometimes, and maybe take space sometimes for a bit. And then when things are a bit better, you could increase that contact. Or if not, you can still maintain minimal contact, but you need to be in touch with those people. Because on a spiritual level, they say you chose them. And also on another level, you can't change them. They are there for a reason. We are given these parents, or we choose them for a reason. So we need to live with them, but in a healthy way. You see, I see you've got your father there.
Wow. Yeah, this is so powerful. I think, yeah, I see everything you interpret and more. Yeah, in fact, yeah. No, this is very helpful because I think you unpacked more things that I could see actually, and you're right about clues. In fact, I think they were. Now that I think of all you know, some of the scenes, there were some clues that the wife, you know, the late nights, of course, you know, and the son could have picked up, perhaps, and they haven't. Yeah, and as you say, that's quite a subtle subtle interpretation, and wow, it's quite amazing. Yeah, sometimes we don't see it because we just want to be, it's again controlling outcomes. We want to be believing that we're in a great relationship, but we might be blinded by it, but we might not see something that's obvious. Yeah, that's very powerful.
That is so true. Yeah. And the other theme, as I said earlier, it's about parenting. How we parent our children. We need to recognize the impact of parenting on our offspring. That the way that we are parenting our children is the way that they are learning how to do life and relationships. And consequently, how damaged people present themselves as in life as adults is what they saw, is from what they saw in childhood that is unresolved. And it is important that we start to recognize these things and we start to parent differently, to stop parenting like our parents and to parent in a conscious way. We are not going to be perfect. We are going to be conscious, and that is the difference. People sometimes think that when you are healing or when you are being conscious, I mean, when you are changing the way you do things, you are going to stop making mistakes. No, you are not. But you are going to be aware of what you are doing, and you are going to learn from it rather than repeatedly keep making the same mistakes. And that is the difference, you see, that people need to recognize and to learn in order to move forward in this, you know, in this new world that we are creating with our consciousness, isn't it? And also relationships, we benefit from stopping looking for mother and father in our partners. Anna was looking for a parent. She recreated the same scene with her brother, you know, that happened to her brother with Martin and Stephen. She did. That is the thing. And so, yeah.
Sorry for the interruption. And for Martin, I was thinking he was seeking familiarity with Anna vis-a-vis his father, because he was quite distant and aloof, and you know, him growing up, and then Anna was the same. So he was like seeing his father in Anna, which is so bizarre because they're not the same gender. Usually, it's, you know, if you're a woman, you seek a father, right? But this is like, actually, you know, the girlfriend was like his father, and that's so compelling. Actually, psychologically, they were very similar, very aloof and very distant. And yes, as you say, for her, for Anna, it was what was it for Anna? Yeah, she was recreating. In fact, she was recreating, and not for the first time, because the mother said, you know, the mother warned Stephen, because this was a repeated pattern. Then we learn, oh my God, she was doing this. She has done this a few times before with men, getting into this kind of weird, unhealthy situations. So yeah, she was recreating it over and over again, the same kind of pattern from her childhood trauma. Amazing. Crazy.
That is, wow, that's powerful what you said about Anna seeking a detached Martin seeking a detached partner who was like his father. That is really powerful, because she was quite aloof, and she played games. She played games because if you remember, when Stephen wanted to be with her and said he was going to leave his family, he turned up at a flat and she had another man there, Peter. So this is the game she was playing. She knew how to play games, you know. And when Stephen ended the relationship, she contacted him, she reached out and gave him a key. You see, so she was trying to be in control. I think she wanted to control the dynamic. That's what she wanted to do.
About
another.
I have to say, I mean, you know, there were a bit of chilling reminders for me. I mean, you know, in my, you know, relationship with Eric, I gave him the keys of my flat too early, and without, without thinking a lot about it, that it's wrong, or I was thinking of it in positive terms, but you see, you can also turn it, you can actually interpret it in a completely different way. And for me, that was a chilling reminder. Oh my God, I gave him my keys. In this movie, it was so clear that it was like a very manipulative kind of gesture, that she wanted him back in her life. She wanted to continue manipulating, and he just took the bait so easily. And it was, that was fatal at the end, as it turned out. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what happens when people have trauma, unresolved trauma, they are repeating what they haven't repaired. So what we repeat what we don't repair. So what she was trying to do was to control the situation, because obviously she lacked control in her own life. So she had to control situations, she had to control other people, and she had to control outcomes. And she knew how to control them. With Martin, she was trying to give him a relationship. And with Martin's father, she was trying to give him, sex, which is what he was probably and most likely not getting at home. And which for him then translated to, I'm sleeping with you, and I'm in love with you, and I want to be with you. You see, that's what it translated into, until and unless it didn't, in the end, where he noted that she was just ordinary when she had rejected him. And she was just abandoned. That's abandonment trauma again. And this was the habit of this girl again, of abandoning people. She would go the way that she wanted to go with them, take them as far as she wanted to take them, and then drop them. And that was a pattern that your mother was trying to warn Stephen about. That's what she does. She would abandon people. Why? Because that's what she had experienced herself. So she was looking for relationships where she could abandon people. And that's what she did with him. And for him, I am sure Stephen had a lot of trauma from his childhood. For him to end up with two women who would abandon him, because he was abandoned in the end by two women, and he ended up on his own, miserable. And you could see the shoes he was wearing. This is a man of medicine who is trained as a doctor, who had been a cabinet minister, and he was now living in a room, renting a room in Europe. And it was really sad, that end. But it also teaches us that we need to heal our traumas. We need to address our past, because sometimes we can live well for a long time or for a while, but it does catch up with us at some point, because we will meet the person who would trigger our deepest wounds. And this is the person who will either propel us to healing or send us to a hellhole. You see, and this is what happened with him. He didn't choose healing. He probably didn't know about it, but he ended up in a hellhole because he hadn't addressed his long-standing traumas. He hadn't repaired what had happened to him that long time ago. I think there was a lot of abandonment from his parents at some point.
Yeah, I think the abandonment theme, as you say, as you reflected on the two of them, features a lot as well, and it's so compelling in the movie. I mean, at this horrible scene of the accident, the woman, Anna, just walks away. It's the she's abandoned and she abandons, right? And then also him, as you say. Actually, I didn't think of it, but yeah, two women that played an important role in his life. Well, one more than the other, apparently, or longer rather, are both. He gets abandoned by both of them. So it makes you reflect on his childhood, because it's it's like a repetition, I guess, of what he has experienced.
That is true. Thank you so much, Judita, for coming to this live. I hope we get another good movie again, like the one you suggested, Phantom Thread, and this one, Damage. I think this is just amazing. What do you have to say to people out there who might be like Stephen, like Ingrid, like Anna, like Martin? What do you have to say to them? And like Anna's mother?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, where should I start? I think I think it's quite obvious what, but you know, I would be more like I would be more wondering how, you know, how do you put across to these people, because they're so oblivious in their lives, you know, they're so set in their lives, and they think, you know, they have everything worked out, you know, at least until the point where something bad, really bad, tragic happened. So yeah, how do you actually put the message across to these, because it requires a complete mind shift. And well, again, you know, I think the first thing is awareness, and then you know, making them aware that some things are, you know, well, it's difficult. How do you tell someone to, you know, that certain things are more important than others? There's, of course, the healing is the key part, right? But before the healing comes, you have to first make them aware that, you know, their priorities, I mean, I cannot tell them your priorities are wrong, but you would question perhaps, don't you care about your son? Don't you care about your marriage? I mean, you know, first thing is awareness of what is actually important in their lives. And I'm sure that if, you know, if they were asked in the right way, and if they were receptive, they would come to the conclusion, oh my gosh, yes, of course, you know, I'd want to make my marriage maybe better, or I care about my son, you know, what am I doing? So I think that awareness, I think they're just they weren't conscious that, you know, that they're not leading healthy lives. I think that awareness first has to come, to then be able to go on a path of healing, because you cannot, you know, I cannot tell them, yeah, you have to heal. I think first they have to be aware that what they're, you know, that their life is not healthy, that their way of thinking, well, or lack of thinking, actually, you know, for Martin, for Stephen. So yeah, I think again, you know, the awareness of what actually matters in their life, you know, has to be stimulated, and then you know, the healing, obviously, again, connecting to themselves, and then working on recognizing what's good in their life already. I mean, they had, despite, you know, as you said, that maybe their marriage was not based on the right things. I still think that, you know, they could have recognized what they have built together. I mean, and you know, they had a son and a daughter. So I think, and also for Anna's mother, right? Not to seek love in the wrong places. I mean, for her, the realization would have to be, you know, that's not love. You have to first kind of find love in yourself, and then everything else will follow much better. Like, you cannot seek love externally. So I think there's a lot that could be, you know, a lot of lessons and awareness that can be kind of stimulated with each one of them. But the most important one is, like, you know, to feel, to connect to themselves first of all, and then love themselves, and not seek love in the wrong places, and recognize what's good in their life, and be grateful what's good in their life. And the irony is, Anna, at one point, she did, as you said, she did say to him, you know, you have a family, you have, you know, what else do you want? So he's not really aware that he could be grateful for many things, and that he has many good things in his life. So yeah, I think there's a lot of that they need to be aware, first of all, and then go on a path of healing and connecting to themselves. That's basically it. I mean, I think
Yeah.
these messages are really the same across any trauma situation. But how do you go about
Yeah,
it?
thank
I
you
think
so
that's
much.
the big challenge.
Yeah, I think with anyone and everyone, we recognize that you come into information when you need it. And we are always in a state of asking. And we just need to open up to receive. And most of us, we gravitate towards our answers at a timely, at a timely opportunity. But sometimes we are not in receiving mode when things come to us and we have a message coming to us to say, this is what you need to do. And when we come across a message, sometimes we need to ask ourselves, why have I come across this message? This I'm saying in general. But for healing to happen, people need to recognize consequences of their behaviors. Sometimes before we set out to do something, like you said, you need to be aware. So you want to think, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And what is going to be the outcome if I proceed and do this? Or what do I need to do differently? That's another way of doing it. And when you recognize that you are going to do something and it's probably not going to work out very well, to consider other people involved, especially in this situation, I think that can be a prompt for someone to heal. In terms of relationships that are good or not so good, my take is that if you are in a relationship and you recognize that you are not interested in someone anymore, leave them if you can. If you feel like you are going to have to cheat, I think it's better that you leave rather than cheat on the person. Because my belief is that everything is on loan. Life gives it to you. And we are not meant to be with people forever. Every person we meet is a cooperative component. It's like a bus. Some buses will take you to as far as they are going, but that might not be where you are going. You might need to take another bus to somewhere else. And that is the same thing with people. And sometimes you have to come off a bus stop, even when the bus is going, further than that bus stop. You need to get off a certain bus stop and then catch another bus, you see. And this is what we need to recognize, that we are not necessarily going to have people in our lives who are going to stay forever. We need to consider the quality of our relationships rather than their lengths. So if a relationship is good, enjoy it. And if it's no longer good, sometimes it's time to say, well, I need to let go, and you can move on and to move on to other things. And that is okay, I feel. And also, like we were saying about attaching people to goals, I think it's important in healing that we recognize that we don't attach people to our goals, but we look for a situation, not a person. If someone is no longer fit for purpose for the relationship, you need to let them go, and you need to look for someone else who's fit for purpose, because that's how it is. We buy things, you have a sofa for a few years, sometimes you have to chuck it out and you have to buy another one. It is what it is, and sometimes you have to give it to somebody else, and sometimes someone will pick it up, and sometimes it can go to the dump, and that is what it is. That is the same thing with us in relationships. It's time we started to think that way through our healing. Resources are out there, for people to heal. There's a lot of information these days about childhood trauma. I think that's where to start. That's where people need to start, to explore where they come from. When you find yourself in certain situations, circumstances, and relationships, look into how you were brought up. Look into your childhood. Look into your adverse childhood experiences and start to repair that. Otherwise, you'll keep repeating it. I think that's all we can do. I mean, for people to buy books and join groups, join intentional healing groups rather than drama and all that stuff. So that is very, very important. But thank you so much, Judita. That was really helpful. And I hope anyone who's watching found this information we are sharing here today helpful, and we will keep sharing this trauma on the screen to just learn about trauma as it is portrayed in films or movies on screen. Thank you so much for watching. Judith, Admire, Joyce, Chene, Gugu, and anyone else. Thank you so much. Quality life before relationships. Say hello to Mani Judith. I will see you soon.
I will. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.